forward to seeing what you will do with these products. We're also looking forward to 2020.
Well, that was weird. The graphs they showed are actually meaningless. They're not even labeled. Stupid Apple. Holy sh**. Hey, what is up everybody? My name is Timo. You already know what this video is going to be about. Let's talk new Macs. So about 14 years ago, Apple was moving their whole laptop and desktop lineup away from PowerPC to Intel, and over the years we've seen how good those machines have become. Well, at this year's WWDC in June, they've announced they're transitioning away from Intel's x86 architecture towards new ARM-based Macs, which they claimed would take around 2 years, with the first Macs arriving late this year. And what they showed at their November event were 3 of these new computers. Firstly, the MacBook Air starting at $999. Second, the Mac Mini starting at only $699 US. And lastly, the new MacBook Pro starting at only $1299 US dollars. Okay, so the reason me and a lot of other people are so stoked about these new Macs is of course because of their new processor. Because all of them are going to ship with the same exact Apple M1 chip. Now, when announcing this transition in June, Apple were making claims about how their new chips are going to be both more efficient and powerful than current PC chips, and therefore also their own Intel Macs. And back then they were kind of cautious with their claims because they only showed this graph, which just roughly shows what they were aiming for with their new chips. And these not very meaningful graphs have actually become a recurring theme in the current keynote, which people were quick to point out that they're not labeled, that they're meaningless, and that Apple didn't have any confidence in their own products, because they didn't provide any numbers like clock speeds and stuff like that. But I strongly believe that Apple wanted this response from the internet to just prove those people wrong who were jumping to conclusions too fast. Because only a few days later, this showed up. And in case you don't know what that is, this is a Geekbench 5 score which was performed on the tiny 13-inch MacBook Air, which is fanless by the way. And to put that into perspective, this is the exact same benchmark performed on my gaming PC featuring a Ryzen 5 3600. And this is a fully loaded 16-inch MacBook Pro and an i9 8-core 5K iMac. Nope, this tiny little thing beats an entire gaming PC in raw CPU performance. And in fact, it puts out literally the highest single-core performance on any CPU. Like, not an i9, not a Ryzen 9, no, it's the Apple M1. I mean, in that tiny form factor and without a fan, that's very impressive. And things are only gonna get better from there when you go to the MacBook Pro or the Mac Mini, because those do have a cooling fan inside, which helps the CPU to stay cooler for longer and prevent thermal throttling. And I can already hear the internet shouting, those are just benchmarks, they don't represent real-world use. Well, let's have a look then.
The new 13-inch MacBook Pro can do things that no other compact 3-pound Pro notebook can do, like playback 8K ProRes footage in full quality in DaVinci Resolve without dropping a single frame.
Now, coincidentally, I also use DaVinci Resolve to edit all of my videos. I mean, I only record, edit and export in 4K, which is just a quarter of 8K, but even that can, if the timeline is long enough and there's a lot of animations and transitions, then that can stress my PC quite a bit, to the point where I have to let it pre-render until I can play back smoothly. And the tiny 13-inch MacBook Pro being able to play back 8K footage in DaVinci Resolve, that's also quite impressive. Now, Apple didn't give any information if the clip was edited, if it was color graded, or how long it even was. And those are all factors that make it harder to play it back smoothly. And that's why you should basically just take it with a grain of salt. However, performance is not the only thing that Apple was focusing on with these new chips, because back in June they also claimed that they were going to be a whole lot more power efficient. And oh boy, did they deliver on that. because the MacBook Air now has a claimed battery life of up to 18 hours, which is a 50% improvement over the Intel chips. And as you might have already guessed, the MacBook Pro is no different, because that has received a claimed battery life of up to 20 hours, which is 100% more battery life than with the Intel chips. And the most impressive part is that the batteries inside are actually the exact same as in the Intel models. So all that extra battery life comes not from a bigger battery, but just from the M1 chip. I mean, that in itself is not very surprising, given that Apple has a history of getting great battery life out of smaller batteries than on the Android flagships. Now, because Apple is transitioning to a whole new architecture, there's a bit of confusion around like app compatibility and stuff like that. And when announcing this transition, Apple actually sent out developer kits, which were basically just pre-production Mac Minis, to various different companies so that they can like re-optimize their apps for the new ARM-based Macs. But because not everybody has gotten one of these developer kits, Apple has designed or created a software called Rosetta 2, which basically emulates Intel's x86 apps on the M1 Macs, which gives other companies a bit more time to develop or re-optimize their apps for the new ARM-based Macs. And I actually thought that those apps that are emulated through Rosetta 2 would run worse than on Intel Macs, but from what we've seen so far, those apps tend to run just as good, if not better, through Rosetta on the M1 than on Intel Macs. And I think that looks very promising for the future of the Mac. So the question becomes, should you actually buy one of these? And I think that in case you're a serious professional who uses applications or does stuff that's very CPU and or GPU intense for an extended period of time, such as coding, video editing, 3D rendering, stuff like that, then you shouldn't really get these, because I think you could really take advantage of that 16-inch MacBook Pro that is going to be coming eventually. However, if you're just a light user, like somebody who doesn't really need all that much performance, like a student for example, then I believe that those Macs are going to be perfect for you, especially because of that battery life. So that about wraps up my thoughts on the new era of Macs. I think it's very exciting. But what do you think? Leave your questions and your thoughts in the comments below, and while you're at it, please let me know if you've liked the video or not, either through a like or a comment. And if you didn't, then please tell me why, so I can improve, because I'm still learning. And feel free to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of my videos. And maybe I'm going to see you in the next one. Peace.